Good morning, grade 3s and 4s. Happy Wednesday. Today you're going to be reading a story called What to Do with Fido, and you're going to be paying close attention to how plot is used to construct a story. So you're going to see a plot mountain. And on the plot mountain, I'm still considering problem and the solution as the basis of my story, but I also have an introduction, rising action, a climax, falling action, and a resolution or conclusion. Or I have an introduction, what happens first, what happens next, and then this conclusion to simplify. But what these big words mean is the introduction is just when you introduce your characters and your setting, which we've practiced. Introduce our characters and our setting by creating a picture for our reader. Our rising action is that's just the events that happen up until the climax. And the climax is just the most exciting part of the story. Your falling action is usually when your problem is solved. And then your conclusion or resolution is just the ending of your story. So the problem's been solved and you just finish it up. I know this probably seems pretty daunting at first, but we're going to practice it for a couple days, and then you'll start to get the hang of it. If grade 3s, you don't have to worry so much about this whole plot as long as you understand how to introduce the story with the characters and setting, put the events in order, and then finish with a conclusion. But if you want to challenge yourself with this, go for it. That's totally fine. So I'm going to read you a story, and I'm going to show you, use it to illustrate how plot is used in the story. This is one of my favorite stories from when I was your age. It's called The Mitten by Jan Brett, and it has beautiful illustrations. Once there was a boy named Nicky who wanted his new mittens made from wool as white as snow. At first, his grandmother, Baba, did not want to knit white mittens. "If you drop one in the snow," she warned, "you'll never find it." But Nicky wanted snow-white mittens, and finally, Baba made them. After she finished, she said, "When you come home, first I will look to see if you are safe and sound, but then I will look to see if you still have your snow-white mittens." So off Nicky went, and it wasn't long until one of the new mittens dropped in the snow and was left behind. A mole, tired from tunneling along, discovered the mitten and burrowed inside. It was cozy and warm and just the right size, so he decided to stay. A snowshoe rabbit came hopping by. He stopped for a moment to admire his winter coat. It was then that he saw the mitten, and he wiggled in, feet first. The mole didn't think there was room for both of them, but when he saw the rabbit's big kickers, he moved over. Next, a hedgehog came snuffling along. Having spent the day looking under wet leaves for things to eat, he decided to move into the mitten and warm himself. The mole and the rabbit were bumped and jostled, but not being ones to argue with someone covered with prickles, they made room. As soon as the hedgehog disappeared into the mitten, a big owl, attracted by the commotion, swooped down. When he decided to move in also, the mole, the rabbit, and the hedgehog grumbled. But when they saw the big owl's glinty talons, they quickly let him in. Up through the snow appeared a badger. He eyed the mitten and began to climb in. The mole, the rabbit, and the hedgehog, and the owl were not pleased. There was no room left, but when they saw his diggers, they gave him the thumb. It started snowing, but the animals were snug in the mitten. A waft of warm steam rose in the air, and a fox trotting by stopped to investigate. Just the sight of the cozy mitten made him feel drowsy. The fox poked his muzzle in. When the mole, the rabbit, the hedgehog, the owl, and the badger saw his shiny teeth, they gave the fox lots of room. A great bear lumbered by. He spied the mitten all plumped up. Not being one to be left out in the cold, he began to nose his way in. The animals were packed in as tightly as could be. But what animal would argue with a bear? The mitten swelled and stretched. It was pulled and bulged to many times its size, but Baba's good knitting held fast. Along came a meadow mouse, no bigger than an acorn. She wriggled into the one space left and made herself comfortable on top of the great bear's nose. The bear, tickled by the mouse's whiskers, gave an enormous sneeze. Achoo! The force of the sneeze shot the mitten up into the sky and scattered the animals in all directions. On his way home, Nicky saw a white shape in the distance. It was a lost mitten silhouetted against the blue sky. You guys see it? As he ran to catch his snow-white mitten, he saw Baba's face in the window. First she looked to see if he was safe and sound, and then she saw that he still had his new mittens. The end. All right, so in this wonderful story, we can point out the different parts of the plot. So the problem was that he lost his mitten. The solution was that when all the animals blew out of the mitten, it shot up into the air so he can see it and find it. So the introduction was that Grandma sewed the mitten, but she was worried that he would lose it in the snow. The rising action was all the animals came to cuddle up in the mitten after he had lost it in the snow. The climax, which is the very most exciting part of the story, was, when the sneeze shot them all into the air. That was the most exciting event. And then after that, after the most exciting event happens, it starts to taper down towards the resolution or the conclusion. So after the climax, the most exciting part, the mitten was floating in the air and he found it. So the problem was solved. The lost mitten was found. And the conclusion wrapped it all up, where he found his mitten and returned home. So you can either consider these plot terms or you can consider it as beginning, the events in between, and the ending. And that's all for today. So when you're doing your what to do with Fido story, you'll see something like this. So you just have to remember that there's the beginning, the end, and then the climax is the most exciting part of the story. So that's usually the easiest part to find. And then you can do the events that lead up to it and the events after it. Okay, well, good luck, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye.